The students took over the old Commonwealth Bank building on the campus late last night. They claimed the empty site would make an ideal location for a new Student Association's office, arguing the current premises are too small and cramped to provide a full range of services.
We provide student loans and represent students in student cases where they have problems with the university or academics, and they need to be conducted in private, and at the moment we just don't have space for that.
The students say they've been fighting for more space for the past 2 years, the protest action their last resort.
We've had enough, really, and I think it's time that the university took our demands seriously.
According to university management, the students' demands have not been ignored. A planning committee is considering expanding office space within the union building, but the association says it has to move to become more self-sufficient. Today's sitting coincided with a visit by a federal government review team assessing the university in a number of areas before allocating funding.
The quality review team is here to look at how the university is responding to student needs, and this is clearly one example where it hasn't.
Gosford Council had budgeted to spend $500,000 in the courts over the last 12 months. Instead, the bill was $1.5 million. The majority has been spent in the Land and Environment Court as Gosford fought the spread of dual occupancies. Mayor Tony Sansom says several councillors are determined to restrict growth in the region, but he's quick to point out he's not one of them.
My personal view is simply that I don't believe we should be spending that much money on legal fees. I want to see the money spent on basic services.
Council's professional officers recommended the majority of the developments be approved, only to see the councillors knock them back. This house at Point Frederick is a classic example. The owner has changed his plans 5 times and has spent over $70,000 fighting council in the Land and Environment Court. Council has handed over $50,000 in legal fees and in the end lost the case. So all up, over $100,000 has been spent with nothing achieved. Despite similar growth pressures, Wyong Council's court costs were only an eighth of Gosford's bill and well under budget. Wyong claims that's due to a stable council and mediation.
Oh, right, yeah, I didn't know much about that. I didn't work on it. But apparently they didn't get the paper out to this.
Two buses, yeah?
Did you buy one?
Yeah, there's millions. Come on, boys, come on, buy papers.
It's the first time the Arimba Club has hosted a line dancing championship and says it was a huge success. 205 dancers from 13 clubs boot scoop boogied their way through the day, vying for the 8 titles up for grabs.
62-year-old Robert Gross of Rocky Point near Wyong was last seen on Saturday, July 1st, when his wife says she dropped him at Gosford Medical Centre. She says he told her he was catching a train to Sydney, but police haven't been able to confirm whether he ever got on the train. Police say Mr Gross, who's a bricklayer, had turned up for work that morning very sick and had been picked up a short time later by his wife. Police say his disappearance is totally out of character. In the time Mr Gross has been missing, his first grandchild has been born. Yet despite promising his daughter, who lives in Corindai, that he'd call, he hasn't. The anniversary of his son's death has also passed, an occasion he never missed.
Concerned for his welfare because it's totally out of character for him. He hasn't contacted any family members or his wife at this stage, and we're just concerned for his whereabouts.
Police are hoping someone may have seen Mr Gross in the Gosford area on Saturday, July 1st. They say he had only the clothes he was wearing and had no money.
Warming up point is shown in a location which is what we call they move close to the enemy force. Example, that once again is well worth seeing.
Darren Spradbro's body was found buried on his uncle Brian Smith's property at Yarrowitch near Wauchope. Smith, who's been charged with the murder, today took the stand in Newcastle Supreme Court. The court's been told that Smith was seen bulldozing the area where the body was later found. The prosecutor, Mark McAdam, asked him, "Would you like to tell the jury just why you chose to put a road across the gully right over where the body is?" He replied, "It was the only logical place you could push a road across that gully." Smith told the court that on the day Spradbro was murdered, he was in Sydney. He says he went to the Burwood Hotel to meet with a man called Lindsay to discuss a drug deal for a friend. Peter Dykes asked me to ask Lindsay if he could handle some marijuana for him. I think it was 5 kilos or 5 pounds. Smith says Lindsay replied, "I can't, but I most probably know someone who can." The prosecutor, Mark McAdam, also asked Smith, "I put it to you that the chain of evidence that has been produced as an alibi is untrue." Smith said that's not true. 2 Sydney detectives have been subpoenaed to give alibi evidence for Brian Smith. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
The Armagarden Brambles guards were quietly celebrating the end of the strike. The men say they got 99% of the measures they called for, particularly an increase in manning levels. It's an irony that improvements in security in Sydney could push criminal elements elsewhere, creating problems for local guards.
If Sydney decided to get their security tightened down there, well then where are the crooks going to go? They're going to come up here or go to Wollongong.
The union says the biggest concern is drug addicts who have no fear in robberies. Newcastle's guards resume work from midnight, but say they won't turn out to dangerous jobs.
Whatever sites the car crew deem unsafe, they will not be servicing them until such a time as the company makes them safe.
With a backlog of work due to the strike, the guards expect it could take 3 or 4 days before cash supplies return to normal. Peter Ryan, NBN News. In anyone's terms, this is a massive event. 1,306 bowlers fighting it out over 9 days of competition, the 35th Matara Bowls Carnival. Games are being played across the Newcastle region, but Beresfield is this year's host club. Today it was the mixed open pairs. Triples and fours are to follow, with all the finals on Friday week. Players have come not just from the strong hunter clubs, but also across the state, including bowlers with international experience. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Push the button. Yeah, push the button. Part of the back. That's technology. We've even used are not frightened to use it. Now, a lot of the uses, for instance, in irrigation and pumping and all.
Between 1940 and 45, school was out and the RAF was in at the New Lambton Public School. It was used as an RAAF fighter sector or flight control centre and training establishment. At the time, students were bused to other schools around the area, but today some, along with veterans, were back to share the occasion with a new generation. Some got into the swing with performances of war-era songs. A commemorative plaque was unveiled and will help to cement the story of the school's other life into history. And at Shepherd's Hill above the city, another presentation, again from radar operators who manned the site during the war. It was part of a network of coastal defences and was the first operational ground radar in Australia. Today's ceremonies are part of a packed week-long reunion for World War II radar operators who, after tracking so many other fading images, are leaving their mark.
Rescue services were called to the marina at Lemon Tree Passage at around 5 this afternoon. 2 men had been dragged from the water, one lapsing in and out of consciousness.
Here's the boat was capsized and they were both in the water for approximately an hour. They were obviously in a state of shock.
The men had been fishing on this 3-metre runabout off nearby Bull Island. A hire cruiser noticed the submerged boat. The men were lucky they were sighted before dark. A 24-year-old Bob's Farm man was taken by the rescue chopper to Newcastle John Hunter Hospital in shock. His companion was transported by road with a dislocated shoulder. Investigations will continue into the accident. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Andrew Johns left and returned after receiving another painkiller for his shoulder in the first 5 minutes, while it's thought Butterfield has suffered a reoccurrence of his ankle injury. It was their former teammates who engineered the first try. The Reds, who made 7 changes to their side during the week, scored 2 further tries, while Newcastle crossed through Jamie Ainscough, his 15th of the year, equalling Ashley Gordon's season record. The Knights have only won 1 of their last 13 night matches and remain on 30 points. Cronulla is 2 points behind, and even if they lose to the Roosters tomorrow, they can still finish 4th if they beat Newcastle on a better for and against record. Meantime, Curry and West have completed their preparations for tomorrow's grand final. The rivalry between the two clubs best summed up by the Bulldogs fullback.
It just makes it more enjoyable or more satisfying when you win, because you just know in these games West are a champion team and you know that you've had to play well when you beat them.
Shoppers in the Coffs Harbour Mall were treated to a rare display with local riding master Fernando Alvarez putting his specially trained horses through their unusual paces. In a bid to show that dancing horses still exist, the Spanish trainer is taking his horses around the country. And it takes a special kind of breed to be able to perform like this.
The Andalusians have the correct temperament, they have the right conformation, and they're a very patient, very loving horse, and they tend to do what their trainer asks of them.
To perfect these kind of moves takes patience and months of intensive training, but the results are spectacular. These days, dancing horses are a unique sight in Australia.
Obviously the art is still quite big in Spain, but not anywhere else in the world. It seems to be a fading thing.
Amanda Bolger, NBN News.
Parks, I think, are for people, and parks in a city are for kids. And this is what this park's for, I'm quite sure. And I'm really, really happy with what's happened today.
Blackbutt Reserve has always been a special place in the heart of the city. Its council and community group custodians have sometimes been at odds over how best to preserve the remnant of bushland. There was a long-running dispute over whether animals should be kept in the park. Now, $2 million later, there's a ramped and elevated nature walk second to none of its type. Dozens of species of birdlife, along with wallabies and koalas, share a series of habitat enclosures linked by a walkway. People can get close to the animals without looking at them through bars.
I've never seen anything, definitely in Australia and probably in the world, that would surpass. I've seen some very good ones and similar to what we've got here, but nothing that would be better than this.
Special trains brought showgoers to a matinee nostalgia concert in Newcastle. Inside, though, many were taken on a trip back through time. Hosted by Bobby Lim and featuring acts such as the Glenn Miller Tribute Band, the Andrews Sisters, and Dorothy Barry, Australia's Dame Vera Lynn, the concert was a tribute to servicemen and women. The concerts were staged at the Newcastle Showground and Entertainment Centre, which was a wartime training camp from which soldiers went out to fight in every theatre of war. They've come from all over to show their models in Newcastle, painstakingly detailed trains, towns, country scenes and cuttings, and even boats. For some enthusiasts, what may have started as a hobby could now fill a house. And model technology just isn't confined to an old box under the bed or tucked away in a cupboard. It's moving with the times. You've heard of the tilt train. This is the swing train.
We're trying to take model train industry a long way ahead of an existing railway system.
Wherever the new design winds up, it just goes to show that some of the greatest journeys begin with an imagination.
Robbie Waterhouse has been warned off tracks for his involvement in the scandal in 1984, a move which has clearly taken its toll.
And I just appeal to the AJC and the members to open their hearts to a man who's been banned from racing for 11 years.
Still at Randwick, and the feature today was the up-and-coming stakes over 1,200 metres. Ridden by Brian York, the Kiwi started a 13-8 favourite, Flying Spur second at 10s, and the Bolter Catalan opening third at 125-1. To Melbourne, where they thundered down the Flemington Strait in the Manikato Stakes over 1,200 metres. You Remember started at 6s with Seaskay and Blevick filling the minors.
While these athletes are making their mark locally, it's hoped with further training they'll be up there with the best in Australia. The North Coast Elite Athletic Squad was taking pointers from Australian Institute of Sport coach Efim Shuravetsky. He says with their ability still to be fully developed, they have the potential to become our future Olympians.
It's obviously kids at this age don't have really good technique, and there are a lot of work to do. But they're very keen and very capable, and I believe in a few years' time we'll see some of them representing our country.
During the two-day camp, the AIS coach corrected bad techniques and offered advice on training. Some of the drills may look awkward but help improve coordination, a key aim of the program. North Coast coach Phil Newton says AIS level instruction is invaluable.
They spend a lot of time working with local coaches, and to get somebody here with international experience and that is working at a high level with senior athletes in Australia, like at the Institute of Sport, I think they get an awful lot of information and they get a whole new slant on their events.
Amanda Bolger, NBN News.
Since it was set up as an environmental watchdog 3 years ago, the EPA has kept a close eye on pollution levels in Lake Macquarie. One of its success stories is the huge reduction in the amount of the mineral selenium being dumped into the waterway by Pasminco.
We've seen, for example, a 90% reduction in selenium and other trace metals that are coming out in the effluent into Cockle Creek since about 1988-89.
The EPA says stricter pollution control licences on 41 industries, including power stations and coal mines, are slowly reducing the amount of sediments, trace metals and other contaminants entering the lake. Tougher measures on effluent disposal will stop all sewage being dumped into the lake by Hunter water treatment plants by the end of 1997.
Our focus then will shift on the operation of the sewerage systems themselves to make sure that there aren't sewer overflows and to make sure they're properly maintained so that you're not having surcharges and wet weather problems, for example.
But the biggest challenge is tackling the cumulative impact of pollutants entering Lake Macquarie's catchment area.
I think the results that we have to date are certainly very encouraging, but they also point to some of the things that are still left to be done. I don't think we can rest on our laurels just yet.
Melinda Smith, NBN News. It's a war that's raging across the nation. The once familiar corner shop and small business struggling to keep its place in a buyer's market.
The consumers have to weigh up whether they want unrestricted hours, 7 days a week, with eventually, we view, very high prices, or whether they would prefer to have some restrictions but a wide range of choice and lower prices.
Graham Poole represents a rising force in the form of the Small Business People's Association. Next month, the Hunter branch will visit the Northwest, where retailers in Armidale are protesting against extended supermarket shopping hours.
Well, we can help them establish a small business group in the New England region, and effectively what that does is give them a voice, as we have got here in the Hunter region, straight into state parliament and straight into federal parliament.
When squeezed out of the market, small retailers argue there are hefty economic and sometimes devastating social costs. In their fight to protect their livelihoods, small business owners from the Hunter are heading off to Canberra tomorrow to present their case to federal politicians.
In England, there's a Monopolies Commission. In America, there's an antitrust set of laws. They would not allow the takeover of the retail business as we're seeing at the moment. They'd stop it. And we're calling on the government to stop it too.
"30-year-old Heather Walker considers herself an ideal role model for young women wanting to enter male-dominated trades. She's a builder who runs her own company and employs nearly 130 males.
I used to get that all the time, like, "You're so short, you know, how can you wear the gear?" Or "We've only got a guy's toilet." And it's like, fine, but I mean, we use the same toilet at home, so big deal, and all the gear fits and it's not a problem.
Along with other tradeswomen, Heather is encouraging teenagers across the state, including Year 8 students at Raymond Terrace High near Newcastle, to consider non-traditional jobs. Women currently make up just over 12% of apprentices in Australia, most found in hairdressing and food industries. The federal government's vocational certificate program and school tours are aimed at boosting that figure.
Some girls know exactly what they want to do, other girls have no idea, others are controlled by their parents as to what they have to choose later on, and others are full of questions.
Why shouldn't they be able to have the opportunities that are open to everybody? And they can do just as good a job, and there is a lot of talent maybe there just waiting to be discovered. So,
with a choice of around 450 trades, young women are being urged not to limit their career options.
If you have a dream, fulfill it. Don't let anyone say you can't do that because you can only do this. There's no such thing anymore. Everybody has the right to do whatever they want. So go out and have a go.
Lobsters are selling for about $40 a kilo, each one of these worth around $30. Licences to catch a yearly quota can cost more than $1,500, but the port's few permit holders are doing battle with poachers.
With the warm weather and flat seas, we're having a major problem with divers who are actually raiding and thieving lobsters out of traps.
2 to 3 times a week that traps have been raided.
Traps or pots set in shallow waters along the coast are being raided and wrecked by divers who then sell their haul. A legally caught lobster must be tagged and sales outlets must be able to provide proof of purchase to fisheries inspectors. Recreational divers are only allowed to catch 2 lobsters per person by hand, and these 2 will soon have to be tagged. Infringements for tampering with traps or selling lobsters illegally attract stiff penalties.
$10,000 maximum fine. Also, if we find persons actively engaged in stealing from commercial fishing gear, we also charge them with theft under the Crimes Act, which carries a criminal record.
It is our livelihood and it is a managed fisheries resource, and like we're doing the right thing, and it's about time everyone else toed the line too.